Hello, everybody. Kay Crystal Griffith here. Can you believe we are starting our first official week in 2021? So what are you going to do this week? Something that maybe has been on that burner that if you just know you would do it, it would move so much in your life. I want to challenge you to think about that today. What is that one thing? It could be laundry. It could be planning out meals. It could be doing a live. It could be saying hello to someone that you haven't talked to in a really long time. It could be sending out those Christmas cards. I know some friends of mine who have yet to do that, and that is a-okay, right? Because we just need to have some things on our to-do list at all times. I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. So this is day 2 of our emotions, wisdom, and your body. And today's word is anxiety. I'm sure you have none of that. You've never encountered that. None of your friends have it, right? Oh, yes. Well, it seems to be everybody's best friend in 2020, but it doesn't have to be, and it needs to radically change for your health. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. So here's my little disclaimer that I am not a doctor. I'm a researcher. And so I tend to find the most random things in the most hidden places. And that is the fruit of this labor that we're going to be spending the next 15 or so minutes with you. And every day of 2021, bringing to you one new emotion that we tend to carry in our body and creates all kinds of fun effects. So let's get on with our education, our edification, and our encouragement today, all about anxiety. So you probably have an idea of what anxiety is and what it can do to your body, but let's just clarify. So anxiety is a feeling of worry, nervousness, a real unease about something, right? It tends to be a red flag for a lot of us if we pay attention to those little red flags, those nagging gut feelings, right? And it's typically about something, an imminent event that's about to happen, or something with maybe an uncertain outcome. So for example, I know somebody that recently, just standing in the line to order food, just suddenly got very fearful and full of anxiety and actually started shaking. That nervousness came out in a physiological way. So wouldn't that just be stress? Maybe they're just stressed about talking to somebody. Well, let's talk about the difference between anxiety and stress. So stress refers to any thought, a situation, or an event that provokes an anger or nervousness or frustration. Ordering food should not be provoking that, right? Anxiety is provoked by stress. So if that is in fact a stressful situation, just ordering the food, now the anxiety level begins to rise and we're actually getting fight, flight, freeze. And the fourth one is faint now, right? There's 4 F's now. And so that can begin to activate that issue. And so once we get fight, flight, freeze, or faint involved, we go to what's called downstairs brain. And I wasn't even going to talk about that, but I think we should, because I think we do need to understand what a lot of these emotions are going to do to our bodies. And this is based on the work of Dr. Karen Purvis, and she created something called TBRI, trust-based relational intervention, originally designed for adopted or foster or hard to place kids. And in fact, what they figured out was the kids are really not hard to place. The kids just need to be emotionally connected. And so she developed this amazing program that really begins to help the kids identify their emotions and what they need in a moment. Because what happens is when we get dysregulated with all these emotions that we're going to talk about this year, we go to what's called downstairs brain. And when we go to downstairs brain, we are highly dysregulated. We tend to have meltdowns, even as adults, mind you, temper tantrums, we're angry, we're triggered, and we can't really control ourselves well. So how do we get back to upstairs brain? Upstairs brain is your prefrontal cortex. This is where your executive processing lives. And that executive processing is about rational judgment. It's about making good decisions. It's about using and applying the wisdom, right? It's about regulation. And so we have to move ourselves if we're dysregulated, or those kids that she was working with, Dr. Karen Purvis, and move them back to upstairs brain so that they can begin to function. So a couple of the things that she figured out with these kids serves really well for anxiety. I got to tell you, I think this is a download from the Lord because this is nowhere in my notes. So you guys bear with me. I will not go as long as I did yesterday, I promise. But some of the things that we as the calm adults in a situation where our kids or another adult is dysregulated and in downstairs brain, we can ask some questions of them. So Do you just need a timeout? Timeouts are not always bad. We as parents should be taking timeouts. You know what? I just need 5 minutes to myself. No, I don't need you to follow me into the bathroom. No, I don't need you to knock on the door while I go to the bathroom. No, I just need to take a shower by myself, right? We need to be able to say that to our kids and have that respectful boundary held. And I get that we have little kids and they're still going to wander in, or they're going to stick their hands under the door. And yep, even my 15-year-old tries to do that. Mom. I'm like, seriously, kid, you're 15. So it happens, right? Even to the best of us. So I just want to encourage you, begin to set up some better boundaries for that self-care effect, because it is going to help you stay in upstairs brain, especially if they're in downstairs brain. So if they are in downstairs brain, some things to consider and to think about. We ask the questions around my household. Do you need your weighted blanket? Those things are amazing. Now I will tell you, either love them or you hate them. I don't care for them. I need just one blanket rolled over on my feet. I'm good. But my daughter has 2 12.5-pound weighted blankets. And if she could have 2 more, she would. She loves those things. And she sleeps under them all the time. And we even bought a little lap size one. So like if we're traveling in the car, or if she is in a stressful situation, going somewhere at a doctor's appointment or something, she can just lay that on her lap or hold that against her. And it provides some, not only compression, but just weight that really is a deeper pressure, and that helps anxiety. So deep pressure does that. So one of the tricks of the trade for teachers before COVID, when they were teaching TBRI ideas and tools, the teacher would go around and would like cup the shoulder. So they would just feel this deep pressure. So it wasn't hard. It was just a deep pressure on their shoulders. And it made all the difference in the world for many, many kids. That's all they needed. They needed that connection. They needed a deep pressure. And then their whole parasympathetic system could go, and they could come back to upstairs brain. Sometimes it's that easy. Other times they might need noise canceling headphones. Maybe they just need to go draw. Mine's a big one for dancing. She'll go down to the basement. She'll put her headphones on. She'll just dance for a little bit. And then 5 or 10 minutes later, she'll wander back up and she's good to go. And sometimes they can begin to self-regulate, and we can begin to self-regulate. But if I lose my mind while she's losing her mind, we are in big trouble, folks. So when it comes to anxiety, one of you has to be the calm in the storm and let your peace overwhelm the chaos around you. Remember that conversation from yesterday? I'm telling you, it works wonders in a variety of these emotions. So when we talk about anxiety, anxiety itself is that uneasiness, that fear, that worry that you sometimes feel. And stress can bearing on that anxiety. So they kind of go together and they feed off of each other, to be completely honest. This is not a good feeding combination. It can be a feeding frenzy if they get to downstairs brain and they're so dysregulated. And then everything that you do or say is just gonna cause more chaos. But anxiety sometimes has no clear cause, like the person that was in the line to order the food. No reason whatsoever that we could see on the outside that would have been causing that chaos for them. And yet in that moment, there was a trigger of some sort and they immediately went to downstairs brain. So we do need to think through, how can we best help and serve in those situations, even when we have our own anxiety. So here's another example. You're sitting in traffic, you're late for an important meeting, you're watching the minutes tick away while the traffic's not moving. So this is what happens in your body. So your hypothalamus is this tiny control tower in the brain. I love this example. And it decides to send out an order. Send in the stress hormones. Because as that begins to rise in time and you're going to be late for your appointment, those stress hormones begin to creep in. And those stress hormones are the same ones that trigger your body's 4 F's that we just talked about: fight, flight, freeze, or faint. And the stress hormones begin to send you to downstairs brain. So then your heart races, your breath quickens, your muscles are ready for action. You're very irritable all of a sudden, you're very quick on the draw, and honestly, snarky, to be completely honest. And this response was designed to protect your body in an emergency situation, like you're out walking in the Rockies and you come across a bear, right? That makes sense. You need that response in your body so you can protect your body so you can survive the situation. But the fact is, the traffic is not moving. The traffic is not going to go any faster the more you rev yourself up and go to downstairs brain, right? So some other ideas about anxiety. Some people have a very sense of impending doom. And once you cross over to a certain avenue, there is some chemical imbalance there that needs to be handled by a professional. And so a sense of doom or the other shoe dropping is really what we're talking about here. I just feel like something's coming, or I don't know, I just feel something's off today. That's really what we're talking about. We're not talking about the world is ending. Although anxiety, as it gets chronic, as it's really not being handled well with some tools for self-care, and we're not able to help that anxiety release, so you're not revved up all the time, it can lead into some other major issues like that impending doom situation all the time. And I don't want to name certain other names to other types of mental health issues, and I'm not dismissing any of them here today. I want you guys to understand that. But I am saying that there are some tools that we can put in place, and we can learn how to bring ourselves out of downstairs brain. And so another one is difficulty concentrating. And that goes for so many different ailments and illnesses that are out there. Even COVID right now has what's called brain fog. And I liken it very much to the brain fog that I had in the first 4 years after my brain injury. You just cannot concentrate for the life of you. And it's worse than the span of a gnat. You just can't even focus on what they're saying. And even today, I'm 25, almost 30 years out from my car accident, that somebody will ask me a question and I'll just look at them and go, so I know you asked me a question. No idea what you just asked me. Could you ask me a different way? Because it would need to go through a different processing unit for me to actually understand what they were asking. And that's part of that brain fog issue. So then there's panic attacks, which that anxiety that we were talking about when they were ordering food was rising to that point of. And at that point, those panic attacks can last from minutes to hours. And I've seen it happen, and they lose a lot of control over their body. So that is something we really got to pay attention to, so we can get them from downstairs brain to upstairs brain a lot faster, being the calm in the storm, right? So heart palpitations, chest pain, lightheadedness, maybe you're even warmer than normal. You know, I gotta laugh every time that we have to have our temperature checked in places right now, because we don't do it by the head. If you have epilepsy, if you have brain injuries, if you have concussions, you should not be getting your temperature checked at your head, by the way. You should get them by here or under the armpit, or behind the ear. So just so you guys know that. And again, I know I'm not a doctor, but I'm letting you know out of the research that I found, shooting it right here, that's such a good idea for really anybody. And so things that you're thinking about with your temperature, if you're just revved up because you have a doctor's appointment, you don't know what the results are going to be, you don't know what they're going to say, you automatically are raising your body temperature. So I look at these body temperature things and I'm like, that's not really an accurate check of whether or not they have COVID, to be completely honest. But you know, who am I? I'm not in charge of the world today. So let's talk about headaches. Headaches are a very clear indicator of stress and anxiety, and they will feed off each other with those headaches. So you definitely want to pay attention to those. Irritability, upset stomach, those ulcers that we mentioned even on day one, very easy to come in with anxiety, and especially chronic anxiety that leads to this stress, underlying stress all the time, and cortisol levels as part of those hormones that are released, you know, that begins to build up, and really before you know it, you could have an ulcer. I know somebody else that has bouts of diverticulitis. I can never say that one really well. And so they will get that when their stress level goes up. So breathing problems, rapid shallow breathing, pounding heart, upset stomach, loss of libido. You know, if you're married, you're in the bedroom, and now you don't want to do anything in the bedroom. And that could be that anxiety level. Extreme fatigue is a big one. And especially, I know COVID has that as a very long-term symptom. It probably took me a good 12 weeks to get over my fatigue. And then with the brain injury, you just have it. There's like this low level fatigue just all the time. So then how about an increase in blood pressure? You know, that anxiety can make that spike up. Muscle aches and other pains. You know, I know somebody who has costochondritis, and that we have figured out seems to be stress related. And so, you know, there are so many issues that stress and anxiety, and I am using them interchangeably because I think they feed off of each other pretty quickly. So stressful life experiences, they're going to increase your risk for all kinds of fun things that are in the DSM-5 and things that your doctor can prescribe for you. And I just want to encourage you, you know, the sooner that you can be in charge of your body, And I don't say that flippantly, but I say that deliberately. The sooner that you can make the change to go, I need to deal with what is causing this anxiety. I need to deal with this root of what's going on. And here's the thing, a lot of people don't realize some of this is generational. So they realize when we start talking about anxiety, oh yeah, I remember my mom, man, she was pretty darn anxious. Or my dad, oh, he always thought the world was going to end. And they don't realize until we start talking through some of these ideas of what the trauma could be rooted in, that it's come down generationally. And so it's not just almost embedded, so to speak, in their DNA, but it's also replicated through their parents or through their grandparents. And they have seen how their parents interact with stress and they've picked it up. And it is that easy. That's called programming. And so then you have this generational piece that's internal, and then you have this external piece of programming where, you're getting it from the parents or from those around you who also have that issue. And that then infiltrates everything you do in your life. And that's why I'm doing these emotional concepts with you guys, because I want you to understand these emotions don't just arise and go away. They are rooted in something. And so we need to get to the bottom of the root in order to really just yank it out and pull it out and be able to allow it to heal. We want it to heal. So you don't have these opportunities to go right back into where you've always been, right? So I want to encourage you today. I know the world says anxiety can last a long time and it can turn into all these other things, and your brain gets flooded and your nervous system gets flooded, and all these chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol, those are two big chemicals that are flooding your system with anxiety and with stress level. And really long-term exposure to cortisol, it's going to contribute to weight gain. And so all of us in our lovely 40s, have this little muffin top if we're not at the gym all the time. And who's at the gym at this point? But I kind of had my muffin top before COVID. And so, that cortisol comes from chronic long-term stress. Are there cortisol tests? Yep. And you could pass all of them. And I do. Every last one of them says I have no cortisol issues. And yet, soon as my stress level goes up, I see what happens right around that midsection, which is where the cortisol settles. And so I just laugh. I'm like, okay, yep, I hear your test, but then I have this evidence over here that suggests otherwise. And so I can tell you there have been some things that I began to adjust and change in my life that this year, crazy as it is, for COVID to have happened this year, I had already begun to implement these, and I actually lost weight in the middle of all this chaos with my daughter. And it really wasn't from stress. It was, I was really beginning to teach myself how to really focus on the food and metabolize what I could in a different way, in a different combination of things. And it really helped my cortisol levels. So I would just want to encourage you in your wisdom verses today, because it's not an easy fix to get rid of anxiety as far as, well, we can just not be anxious, right? Let's be realistic about that. That's not really going to be the main issue to solving this problem. We can put tools in place. And even when we're able to walk through the trauma, the root, and pull it out, which we can do in 1, 2, 3 sessions, and then there's layers to those traumas, right? It's not all the time just the outside of the onion. You have to peel off, and then you find more stuff hidden in there that we have to get rid of. That's begin to feed the actual anxiety and the trauma. And so we want to make sure that as you're working through your traumas, as you're working through your emotional pain, and you're really beginning to ask yourself, where does anxiety show up in my life? Remember our homework from yesterday? And has it been negative? And has it been positive? And has it been a drive? Anxiety can cause perfectionism, folks. You don't need to be perfect. There's not one perfect person on this planet. Not one. So perfectionism is not what God has for you at all. So you can release yourself from that. Boy, it's pretty freeing when you do, because I used to be one. And that doesn't mean you still don't take pride in what you're doing or have good expectations of what you're trying to get accomplished. That's not what we're really talking about there, but that drive for everything to be in a proper way, in a proper control, that perfectionism, that is never going to be healthy. And that is going to cause those hormones that we were talking about just to go through the roof again. So we got to be super careful with those. So I want to share some verses with you. First one is Philippians 4, 6 through 7. And I'm just giving you some short things off of those, but I want to encourage you to go look them up. So remember that I want you to use your name in these when you go to look these back up. So instead of just saying, be anxious for nothing, I want you to use your name, just like I'm going to do. Crystal, be anxious for nothing. God, the creator of the universe, is telling you, don't be anxious. I got it. Why can't we trust that? There's your root. There's the trauma right there. Why can't we trust him to do what he says he's going to do? Why can't we trust him to give us all the promises that he says he's already given us? Or why can't we trust ourselves to trust that word? Right? Is there something more? Do we feel like we have to earn that right to not be anxious? No, that doesn't mean things don't happen and you feel that instant well-in. And, when they took my kid out by ambulance, there's a lot of anxiousness there. And I still had to stay the peace and the calm, or she was going to go back to downstairs brain where she was already. And I had just gotten her back up when the ambulance people came. So, it is what it is. And we all have to walk through it. But we have all these amazing tools to help us remember, be the peace that overwhelms the chaos around us, right? So here's another one. Psalm 56:3. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. Not me, not the world, not my bank account, not my car, not all those things, right? I put my trust in him. And he's going to give me everything I need. He's going to be my protector. He's going to be my provider. And he's going to be my power. I don't have to be. Yay! I love it when I fired myself from his throne. It was so freeing. All right, Luke 8:14-15. Worry chokes God's seeds. Wow. So if we're stressed and we're anxious and we're worried, we're choking out the opportunity for God to move, whether that be in you, whether that be in somebody else. I've actually heard somebody say, I don't want to rob that person of being a blessing to someone else. So I'm not going to show up with the meal that I already planned. I'm going to let them take care of it. And that was pretty insightful to go, they knew this other person needed to do that for them. And so they took themselves out of the equation and they allowed God to move between them. It was pretty neat to see that. All right, Proverbs 12:25. Anxiety weighs down the heart. And we just talked about all the ways it does that. It pumps up your blood pressure, and then it causes these adrenals, and then it causes the cortisol. I mean, all of that is really weighing down, because then it's going through your body and it's making your heart have to pump more junk, which is what those hormones really are, because they're not helpful to us, it seems like, unless we're in fight, flight, or freeze, or faint, which in reality every day, hopefully you are not. And so I wanted to share this one. This is really cool. Fear not, or do not be afraid, occurs over 103 times in the Bible. Do you think God might want us to get something there? Fear not, or do not be afraid. And then Deuteronomy 31:6. You guys might all know this one. Be strong and of good courage. Do not fear nor be afraid, for the Lord your God, he is the one that goes with you. He will not leave you, and he will not forsake you. So this is the one who goes with you, the creator of the universe, the big guy upstairs who created everything, right? So the opposite of anxiety is kind of interesting, because we're going to do a little loop here. So the opposite of anxiety is self-confidence. Self-confidence, not arrogance, mind you. Self-confidence is rooted in identity. Where does your identity come from? It does not come from anyone or anything on this planet. I know you got to think about that one for a minute. Your identity does not come from anything or anyone on this planet. Your identity is rooted in Christ, who is within you. And that came from before the foundations of the earth, by the creator of the universe. Your identity was already established. Your identity are not your labels. Your identity is not, I'm a nurse, I'm a chauffeur, I'm a mom, I'm a daughter, I'm an entrepreneur. Your identity is not any of those things. Those are labels. And those labels change like the wind all the time. They're not your identity. Your identity is rooted in Christ. And your worth exists as a masterpiece, as the most priceless object in the world, because you exist. That's it. Isn't that cool? And so now you can realize that no matter what anyone else thinks, what anyone else says to you, and let me tell you, I had a couple of trolls today go after me today, and I was just like, wow, what could I say to them, Lord? And I just said, I hope you have a peace-filled day. And all of a sudden, the tone of their whole conversation changed because I was willing to be the peace in the moment of their chaos, because they came at me from a place of chaos. All right, no anxiety. That's where we're trying to get you to. So if we know our identity, and then the other piece that I want to tell you, that identity and this other one really are really married, as far as I'm concerned, is trust. Trust is another one that is that core anxiety. And if you have any trust issues, especially if there's generational trust issues, parental trust issues, spouse trust issues, you have got to get with the Lord to work on that trauma, because when we don't trust, you will begin to close yourself off. And guess what you do when that happens? Your anxiety begins to rise and becomes chronic stress. And so when we are not trusting, now, does that mean we have bad boundaries? Absolutely not. I just want to be crystal clear on that. Absolutely not. Trusting him to be your power, protector, and provider. That's what we're talking about here. Okay. So when we're talking about trust, we want to make sure we're crystal clear that you do not have to trust the wrong people, toxic relationships, put yourself back in a toxic relationship. I'm going to tell you, the minute you leave a toxic relationship, please seal the door. Don't get back. Don't. It will not change. They will not change. Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay. You walk forward in what God has for you, in fullness and abundance, and walking in your full identity in him. Because that purpose and calling that he has for you, for your life, for your destiny, is huge. And only you can do it. Only you can do it. All right. So the other piece of this is choosing to surrender that anxiety, which is going to bring life to you. It's going to bring life not only to just you, but your body, your soul, and your spirit. And you can be free of anxiety. I absolutely firmly believe it. I've seen it in multiple clients. So if you need some guidance on that, feel free to PM me, K Crystal Griffith, on where are we? Facebook, on YouTube, or kcrystalgriffith.com. Yeah, any of those will work. And I'd be happy to help. Now, how do you use this new information that we've talked about with anxiety and stress and worry, and how to create some of those tools for the weighted blankets and the headphones, and really turning on good instrumental music? I'm going to give a shout out to this really cool instrumental piano guy that we listen to all the time, called Dappy T Keys. Dappy, Dappy T Keys. He's awesome. We listen to him through our Alexa all the time. And then that actually, we have instrumental music to put kiddo to sleep. We use things like whole tones, which is another great one from Michael Terrell. And then we also use another playlist that we've designed so she gets kind of her pick at night. And then honestly, I'm an oily girl. So essential oils, I'm not big on the big MLM guys. I think Plant Therapy actually on Amazon does a great job. Lots cheaper too. But we have our diffuser going because that's the best way to bring it in, is by diffusing it. So there's a lot of tools that we use to get our bodies, our mind, our soul, and our spirits to a place of rest in the upstairs brain, so we're not dysregulated. We also use that Healy that I showed you guys the other day. We're all about the tools here. So if you need any information on any more tools, you just let me know. I'll get you hooked up. All right. So when you are talking about anxiety this week, tonight, we're going to get there today. I really do not need to do these this late, I think. There are 3 questions that I want you to remember as you are pursuing wisdom and understanding and knowledge. So remember, how has this emotion been showing up in your life? So how has anxiety been showing up in your life? Has it been negative? Has it been positive? Keeping you on high alert is not positive, folks. I have another friend that does that. Came from a big family, always expected one of the other kids to kind of knock her down or be hiding around the corner. And that high alert status, her little cortisol system couldn't hold it any longer. And so once we were able to pull off that high alert state, man, it was a whole nother ball game for her. And you could just see her walk around in this peace. And literally, I believe 5 years came off her face. And it was just really eye-opening to see God move in that. So it could be negative, it could be positive, but I want you to ask the question of why. And then how can you transform this anxiety? By wisdom. And what you need to do when you feel a rise coming up, what do you need to do? I got to tell you, the best thing you can do is put your little list in the phone. Because when you're not thinking well and you're in downstairs brain, or your kid's going to downstairs brain, you're trying not to go to downstairs brain with them. When you can pull that list up, and you could call it anxiety tool. So it's in the A's. And then you could begin to just think through the list, especially if they're little kids. They can't always answer those questions. But if they're teenagers, if they're other adults, you can begin to ask them, hey, do you just need 5 minutes by yourself? Do you need to go draw? Do you need protein? Oh, that's another big one on our list. Do you need protein? Because that little commercial that you see about being hangry, whoo, my teenager gets that one big time. So the minute we get protein in her, she's like a whole different child. So does your kid need protein? Do you need protein? Caffeine and sugar are not your friends. I know, I hate to break that to you. But it would be better for you actually to drink a whole cup of water, and that would actually bring you sometimes to upstairs brain pretty quickly than it would be to go get that Coke or, that drink or whatever it is. All right, so here's the last piece of the pie. So I want you to take the scriptures that I gave you 3 or 4 tonight, and I want you to add your name and personalize them. All those promises that he gives us, they're just all for you because he loves you so much. And don't worry, I'm going to post those questions back in our chat again. And I'm so thankful that you were able to join us today. Hopefully I'm shorter on time than I was last night. I'm working on it. All right. You guys have a blessed night. Can't wait to visit with you tomorrow. Oh, I didn't give you the word for tomorrow. The word for tomorrow is powerless, because anxiety causes us to be powerless. I think there's a theme here. One is connected to the other. All right. You guys have a blessed day. Come back for powerless tomorrow. Take care.